There are many spectacular events unfurling in this week's parsha. The last 3 plagues and the Exodus. But, for millennia, the rabbis pondered a seemingly minor detail. Why were the Israelites required, before embarking on a very long journey, to borrow their Egyptian neighbors' gold, silver, and fineries? We, after all, are often taught that the Exodus is a spiritual struggle for redemption, so why the emphasis on extremely material things? Rabbeinu Chananel, the 10th century Tunisian Talmudist, answered this question literally. The gold and the gems, he said, were reparations for so many years of slavery. Justice, he taught us, must be meted here on earth, in clear and simple and obvious ways, and the freed slaves deserved payment for their suffering. But others, like Rav Abraham Isaac Kook, weren't so sure. The gold and silver, Rav Kook argued, must have been a crucial part of the divine plan, which is why our parsha mentions them 4 times. Because the task that lay ahead for the Israelites wasn't merely personal or spiritual, it was a real act of bringing about redemption to the world, in the strangest way imaginable, not by speaking lofty words, but by walking to one specific and promised land, and setting up concrete laws, and showing everyone else that it was possible to repair the world in very real, physical, palpable ways. To do that, the Israelites needed to get used to thinking materialistically. And because they'd spent centuries as slaves, they needed a stark and flashy transition, from the house of bondage to bling, to assuage their smallness of spirit, and show them that the divine promise isn't just a metaphor, but a bounty that can be fulfilled here on earth in our time. And so, armed with gold and silver, the Israelites prepare for the final departure. It's a real revolution. Moses overtakes Pharaoh, Hashem subdues the idolaters, the slaves are liberated. Usually, revolutions like these are practiced out in the open, in the town square, in the streets. But we are given the opposite command, which we still observe every year. Stay indoors, have a festive meal, and tell each other the story of the Exodus. Why? Rav Moshe Zvineria, the 20th century Israeli rabbi, had a beautiful teaching. It is the way of the world. He taught us that in times of revolutions and grand, sweeping changes, everyone is swept outside, and personal matters are pushed to the wayside, and family life gets no attention, because no one believes this is the right time to invest in the home. But the Exodus, he continued, is the opposite, because it begins with a calling to congregate indoors, with your own family, a calling that applies to the leaders as well as their followers, for this first family feast of liberation and regeneration. For the entire nation to be stable, we must first bring stability to the private, familial sphere. Unlike the radicals who march in the streets demanding change, our ancestors understood that for revolution not to curdle into violence, or melt into oblivion, for it to be a story that still inspires, and still forces us to live up the same values, it must be first and foremost a radically private and meaningful matter.